Lyle and Andrew Rosman, how are you two doing today?
That's pronounced Rosman.
Rosman. All right, let's do that again. Lyle and Andrew Rosman, how are you doing today?
Excellent, Greg. How are you?
I'm doing awesome. Lyle,
Outstanding.
can you hear? We doing good?
Yep. All good. Outstanding. Happy to be here and appreciate the opportunity. So thanks for inviting us.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm looking forward to talking to you guys. I know you guys are brothers. So before we dive in here, why don't you quickly tell us what you guys do, what your firm's all about?
Drew, go ahead. Take this one.
So we work at OnePoint, which was previously Bleakley Financial Group, and it's a fully comprehensive financial planning firm. Pretty much anything that's a financial issue, we generally are able to take care of, including big life changes, getting ready for retirement, people leaving the state, want to move to another state to retire, things like that. Generally, investments and taxes is the core, probably like 95% of what we do. Good amount of estate planning as well. Make sure everyone's assets end up where they want them to at the end, things like that.
Okay.
And
Awesome.
I think to build on what Drew said, we're looking for when we work with folks is people who are looking for a true financial partner in what they're trying to accomplish throughout their lives from a financial perspective. So as you're approaching any critical financial events in your life, you're looking for someone who's going to walk that path with you, help you understand some complicated things that might come up that seem simplistic to us because we've done them hundreds or thousands of times, but maybe a little bit more anxiety inducing for most folks. And so we want to be that guide and help you get exactly to where your vision is, and be that resource. You know, we talk about OnePoint, which is what we've rebranded to from Bleakley. And people ask what your OnePoint is. And for me, we want to be the one point of contact for you, regardless of what it is that you're comes up in your financial life. We want to be, even if we're not the expert, we have a deep Rolodex and we can find the expert who we can bring in and we can leverage in order to provide the most amount of value to you and to serve you best. So, you know, from our perspective, it's that true partnership, someone to walk that road with you.
I love that. Okay, so now that we kind of got the high level, I'd love to talk about and jump into how you guys kind of work with your clients together, and also probably your relationship, how you guys do that as brothers. So I know the two of you are very different. So let's dive into a little bit maybe about how you guys break up the responsibilities that you have for a single client. Who handles what, and kind of why do you approach it that way?
I think the best way to describe that would be basically Lyle kind of builds the airplane out, and I kind of make sure it gets to where it's going, you know? So he's like the macro big strategy planner, kind of get all your goals and your ducks in a row and everything like that. I'm going to make sure the landing gear gets up after we get off the ground and we actually arrive at the final destination. So that's kind of more, I'll get into like the granular levels of planning, taxes, strategies, and stuff like that, where Lyle kind of better.
Yes. So my goal is always to try to understand exactly what the client is looking for, right? We always say when the vision is clear, the decisions are easy. So we want a crystal clear vision of exactly what you want your life to look like. The first time I sit down with everybody, I ask them a question. If we're having this meeting 3 years from now, and you've worked with us for the last 3 years, what does that 3-year period have to look like for you to look back and say, we nailed it? And you can only do that if you know rock solid, like what that vision has to be. So we want to understand exactly what the vision is. And then we'll go ahead and craft a plan in order to get you to exactly what that vision is and create a system with which to monitor progress, which is really important because a lot of times as you're on the path and you're in it, you don't recognize that you're actually making progress towards the goals. So we have to have that. Drew is so much more technical when it comes to things than I am. And a great example I can give is during the first Trump administration, they passed they passed the tax reform bill, and it was about 1,900 pages. And Drew went home on a Friday. And by Monday morning, he was explaining to our dad, who is a CPA, and his partner, everything that was in the bill. And they didn't understand it at that point. And they're, trained accountants with 40 years experience. That's true. Gets into the technical weeds, but that's where we can bring to bear significant value for our clients, because we're going to take them in places or take them down paths and show them strategies and solutions that other folks may not be able to present to them.
Okay. So that's kind of how what Drew does. He helps fly the airplane. He gets into the technical details. He does all the boring financial stuff. But help me understand more about...
The key is that Lyle, so while I'm doing all these intricate, complicated things, same as a Swiss watch on the inside is doing all these crazy things, Lyle's just telling you what time it is. He's keeping it simple for you. I tell him the complex thing, and then he boils it down so that you could actually understand why we're doing what we're doing. And I'm not the best at doing that.
I love that. So Lyle, explain more to me, like what you do and how that might play out. We got a really good example of what Drew does and how that plays out, going through the details and explaining it high level in a way that other people might not even understand. But help me understand more about when you sit with a client, what does that conversation look like? More specifically, give me an example.
Sure. So when we talk about what your vision looks like, right, we boil it down to a piece. It's a one-pager that we use called our strategic compass. And basically what that gives is your vision, your values, what's important to you. Maybe it's travel. Maybe it's spending time with your grandkids. Maybe it's living by the beach. And then we have the other components of that are sort of like what we're going to do over the next year in order to facilitate, what we're going to do over the next 3 months to facilitate, sort of what the 5-year vision is. And then, what does measuring success look like? And as we have this conversation, it's going to surface the things, one, that are most important to each individual client, but also what their significant pain points are. Maybe it's taxes. Maybe it's investment performance. Rarely it is, but most of the time it's taxes. Most of the time it's risk management. Most of the times it's cash flow issues. But those things will surface as we go through the conversation. And what I tell every single prospective client and every person who is a client of our practice has heard this at least once. When your financial plan is working properly, it should play in the background like spa music. So I ask everybody, Greg, have you ever been to a spa? And you'll say either yes or no. 95% of the time, you're going to say yes. And I always ask as a follow-up, do you go to the spa to listen to the spa music? And everybody says no. Nobody goes to the spa for the spa music. You either go for the massage or the facial or the seaweed wrap or whatever you go to the spa for. But you don't go for the music. However, if you showed up at the spa for your massage and there was no spa music, you would notice it immediately. It would be noticeably missing. And
awkwardly silent.
Correct.
Yeah.
And what it's there to do is play in the background and enhance your experience. That's what your financial plan, when it's working correctly, is supposed to do. It should play in the background and enhance the experience of your life. But why you show up every day is hanging out with your grandkids or traveling. That's the spa treatment. That's why you're there. We want your life to work exactly like that. And I'm the person who, regardless of what happens in your life and shows up that's a financial question or issue for you, we're the financial genies, right? You rub the lamp, we pop out. You don't get 3 questions. You get as many as you want. But we're there to answer that so you don't have to worry about it. You can just focus on hanging out with your grandkids or playing pickleball or whatever it is that's a passion for you. You can just simply focus on that and know that that's spa music, because Drew and I are there making sure the spa music never shuts off. You will know it's always there and it will always be playing.
Let's describe the type of person who comes to you. What are they typically struggling with that finally makes them reach out?
So we tend to come across people mostly who are within the last 5 to 10 years that sprint towards retirement or are about to cross over into retirement. We do work with a fair amount of folks who've already crossed over into retirement, but we feel like we can do the most work for and provide the most benefit and value to folks who are kind of on that sprint towards retirement, right? And we want to make sure that you're positioned as best you possibly can be for that. Most of that is going to be around tax management. Some of it is going to be around investment management. But really for us, it's within that sort of that window, right? Folks who want a partnership, who want somebody to help them along this path. We don't tend to work with a lot of do-it-yourselfers. Occasionally, we come across some folks who that's sort of their MO. That's not a particularly great fit for us. We want to work with folks who want to partner with somebody on this financial journey and are looking for someone to help take what is probably a fairly seemingly complex situation. Folks tend to accumulate things throughout. We're great as Americans. We accumulate stuff. And financial products is not unlike other stuff. Maybe we have an investment account here and an annuity there. It's all sort of in disparate parts and places. And we try to bring all that together and focus it in one place. Our strategies work best for those people who have over $1 million in investable assets. But again, folks who really want a partner to help them through this process.
Okay, so Andrew. Okay, let's play a little scenario here because I want to dive more into how the two of your dynamics play together and how the two of you work with your clients, because that's something that is unique about you. So let's say a client comes in with a too good to be true investment strategy or investment opportunity, rather. What does the car ride home look like for the two of you? You and your brother. How do you guys handle? Okay,
so they come in and they have just like the lights out. It's going to be 1,000,000%.
Oh yeah, baby. Oh yeah, this great big ideas, and you're like, how do you handle that?
Generally speaking, well, first off, I think it would be more like, what's the conversation we had with the client, where we would be like, that's clearly inaccurate. Like, you get into a lot of these like limited partnerships and stuff like that, and you just see them and you're like, okay, those assets are fluctuating no matter what they're putting on your statement. There was a guy around here, David Lerner, and they used to sell these hotel REITs. And they would never talk about the actual performance or the room vacancies or like how many people were actually using these hotels. They would just print a number on a statement. And since the number on your statement never fluctuated, they would be like, so I think we'd probably talk about David Lerner. And we'd be like, wow, I can't believe they're still doing stuff like that. Or like, these are still being proposed to like seniors. Like, this is like, we would be in shock that those things are still available on the market. And also, we'd probably discuss, like, people talk about like these varying strategies that have these levels of complexity that couldn't be understood by 37 CFAs. And they're just, and he's a doctor, so he's a smart guy. He gets it. No, he doesn't. Like, so I always just boil it down to like, there's a simpler path forward. You ever see the NHL stars and they come into like, they make $50 million over a 5-year career. And they buy into all these restaurants and their uncle's barbershop and blah, blah, blah. And next thing you know, they're bankrupt. And I always go to Lyle, I'm like, look, they might have saved a lot of money in taxes because they just lost $50 million. So like on a tax efficiency standpoint, we couldn't have beat that. I'm like, but if they would have came to us, they probably would have like $85 million. They would have paid some taxes along the way and everybody would have been happy. I don't understand. They pay 5% management fees on these crazy ideas. So that's really like usually what we'll
have
talk
a pragmatic
about
conversation about it.
Well, the other thing that's interesting is, yes, you may be able to get those returns, but based on your situation, the needs of your situation and your vision, did you need to try to get those returns and take on the risk associated with it, right? So if there's a simpler path forward to get to exactly where you want to get to, then that's a conversation worth having. Complexity doesn't always improve the situation. Like, simplicity from our perspective that's the most critical thing.
That actually dovetails interestingly into like what you were asking before about like the average person who comes to us. A lot of times they just have piles of, I can't even get my head around without like going through it for a couple, like, why would you ever want to not have just a snapshot of your financial situation at all times that's like actually understandable and knowable so you can make a financial decision? You're going to go, maybe say you go to Myrtle Beach and you find this beautiful beach house and it's what you always wanted. And now you have to go through your 6,000 statements to be like, where would this even come from? I don't even So like a lot of times we can boil that down to like maybe a couple of accounts. Unfortunately, there is complexity still in the taxation of various accounts and things like that. But like, if we could just have it simple, have a snapshot, give me a call. Okay, you need $350 for the apartment in Myrtle Beach. And then they're like, should we get a mortgage? Should we not get a mortgage? Well, let's see what our interest rates are. We can have a much better conversation, and the couple can actually like have a logical conversation of whether they can actually afford the place in Myrtle Beach. And 9 times out of 10, we can get you there the simplest path forward.
The other thing that's interesting about that is we always view the investment piece as secondary to the planning piece. So if somebody comes in and they lead with that, it tends to indicate that they're probably not a great fit for what it is that we do, because what they're focused on and looking at is probably not the best fit for us, because we always view the investment piece more as the prescription, as opposed to the testing and the work you do to actually diagnose the underlying condition.
Let's talk about that then. When somebody first comes to you and they're a brand new client, what's the first thing that you guys typically do? Walk me through what that looks like, that first week, that first month. What do you guys do?
So the first conversation we have with everybody is typically a triage call. We want to understand exactly why the universe brought us together, right? There's obviously something on your mind that led you to seek us out. So we want to make sure that whatever that acute issue is, we deal with it immediately. We might not be able to solve it, but we're at least going to address it with you and make sure that it's understood that this is what the solution is, and we're able to put you on a path to solving that problem. The second thing that we do is we have a 1-hour discovery meeting, really, again, to understand the vision, what's important to you, both financially and just life in general. Then we go back as a team, collaborate together, make sure that whatever it is that you're trying to accomplish is something that we feel that we're able to help you accomplish and provide significant value there. Then we'll come back, and the third meeting that we have is always the presentation. In advance of the presentation, we always send it to the folks and ask them to review it, and just if there's anything that we're missing, anything you want to make sure that we add that's not addressed there, we want to go ahead and make sure we put that in. And then after that, we tell everybody, take time, relax, process. There's no shot clock on this, right? You need to take the time to decide whether this is the path you want to go down, and what makes the most sense for you. And so that's sort of what it looks like on the front end.
So that's what it looks like before somebody becomes a client. What happens after they become a client? Like, the reason why I wanted to ask this is because you said the investment strategy is kind of supports the financial planning piece. So maybe you could explain, how do you get to that part where you start implementing the investment strategy? What does it look like when you guys are diving into the client's financial plan? How do you get that spa music playing? What does that first month look like?
Well, over time, obviously, first things first, we review their tax return and see if there's what kind of planning needs to go into helping them reduce their tax liability, not only this year, but throughout the life cycle of whatever we're planning. Additionally, we'll analyze their statements. We'll see what investments they already have. If we have to work around, sometimes, someone will have someone sold them an annuity. There's a 3-year surrender. Okay, so we have to work around that. Sometimes, someone owns NVIDIA stock or something, and there's a $1 million gain in it. Okay, well, clearly we need to work around that, right? So that's really where the rubber kind of meets the road in the building the plan, is just to make sure that really your 4 core tenets, so your taxes, your investments, your insurance, and your estate plan, just making sure that they're all driving towards the goal you want to drive towards. And at that point, we generally will begin to start to consolidate accounts so that we can simplify your life.
So OnePoint is unique in the RIA space in that we're multi-custodial. So we have the opportunity to utilize either Charles Schwab, Fidelity, LPL, Pershing, or Goldman Sachs to custody our client assets. So based on the types of strategies we're going to implement based on the specifics of the client situation, that will dictate which of the custodians we're going to ultimately wind up working with. Our team will open accounts at those particular custodians. We'll begin to transfer assets in from all of those places. Once we have everything aggregated in-house with whatever custodian or custodians we choose, we will then have our portfolios implemented depending on, again, the specifics of for each individual client relationship will depend on what strategies are deployed. We do everything from as simple and basic as a mutual fund asset allocation, which is kind of what most folks know from their 401k plan, is basically a mutual fund asset allocation, up to separately managed accounts, which are basically institutionally managed portfolios, hedge funds, private equity, private credit, all sorts of alternative investments as well. And we actually have two in-house strategies, one of which is run by Peter Bookvar, who most people know because they see him on CNBC probably 3 or 4 times a week for the last 30 years. He runs a portfolio internally that's solely for OnePoint clients. So, and just to kind of reinforce that point of being multi-custodial, that creates a bit of an issue for, as Drew was alluding to, we want to kind of create that single lens for you to view everything through. So one of the things that the team does, in addition to get you set up on the custodial websites with online access for each individual client, is we utilize Orion to aggregate all of that performance data in one place, and it pulls from the various custodians. So you'll be able to look at all your investments through Orion, regardless of whether you have several accounts at Charles Schwab or a couple of accounts at LPL, and maybe a one-off account at Fidelity. We'll be able to do all of that in one place. The other thing that we do for folks who are still working and still contributing to an employer plan is we have a third-party app that we use, which allows us to manage the client's retirement plan while they're still working and while it's still being custodied with the plan administrator. And that's super helpful in making sure that our client's asset allocation, which is what most people know and most people talk about, which is, again, how much stock you own versus how much bonds you own within your stock allocation, large cap, mid cap, small cap, growth, value, international, et cetera, but also asset location. Because one of the things that we know is that in order to maximize tax efficiency, asset location is critical. There are certain asset classes that behave better depending on what type of account they're custodying in. So you have your taxable assets, you have your traditional qualified assets, like a regular IRA account or a regular 401k account, and then you have Roth assets. Different types of assets behave differently from a tax perspective, and each of those three places is the more preferred environment for those types of investments. And we understand that we can add probably anywhere from 1% to 2% annualized in tax efficiency by making sure that all of your assets are tucked into the right environment for those assets. And so these are all the things that we do on the front end.
Andrew, okay. You guys do a lot of stuff on the front end. I want to know something that you guys do for your clients that takes significant time, but they'll never see or know about. So I know it's hard for you to do, Andrew, but put your humble hat on and brag about yourself a little bit.
I think the biggest thing is that our team sets levels at different market locations. So say 10% above where the S&P 500 is right now, or 10% below, and we rebalance across the book. And people don't notice it until it works. And so we looked back at a 70-30 portfolio, outperformed the S&P 500 this year due to diversification through international diversification, an allocation to gold and silver, and just rebalancing at the proper levels. The fact that you could get better returns and take on 30% less risk is just magical. You're not, when the market's down 20%, you're like, is the world ending? Is it this, that? We don't think about things like, we take all the emotion out of it. Our team monitors these things. They tell us, look, this hit this number. Okay. Then it has to be done. We're sensitive towards tax efficiency, obviously, in certain cases and things like that. But other than that, and it's actually probably a disservice to ourselves. We don't reach out and tell every single client that we rebalance. But then when we review the portfolios at the end of the year, you're like, look, you're in a 60-40 portfolio and you kept pace with the S&P 500. I know all your friends owned NVIDIA and Tesla and whatever and Amazon and did 1,000,000,000% and Bitcoin was blah, blah, whatever. But the reality is you've actually been outperforming what we even told you would do, just simply through better diversification and systematic rebalancing. And it's huge. It's huge.
Drew, I think just another thing, and I think this works really, really well for what Greg was asking. Can you talk a little bit about the tax prep letter that we do and sort of like how we integrate with everybody's tax preparer, CPA, just to make sure that tax season runs as smoothly as possible?
Basically, if you're a tax preparer, you're gonna see your client. Maybe you talk to him once, not during tax prep season and stuff like that. The tax preparer doesn't know the forms that they need before they move forward with the return, especially if you move over your assets or you change advisors and things like that. So we'll just give them a list of all the forms that are necessary before they start. That way you don't end up in an issue where there's like, oh, that's right, my mom died, I inherited this account, we have this one other 1099, now I have to amend my return to get a letter from the IRS. So we take care of that. And additionally, as we move throughout the year, because we're meeting with people 2 or 3, 4 times, if say in New York, a great example is there's a $20,000. Sorry, I know you live in Florida and you don't believe in state taxes. I get it. We live in New York, so there's a $20,000 exclusion per spouse on IRA assets, right? So in this magical time period of being 65, between 65 and 75, there's a space where you can move $20,000 per year and it's New York state tax exempt. But the accountant doesn't know that, right? And there's not going to be any withholding. They don't know about the strategy you're thinking of imparting throughout the year. So we just like to reach out to them the prior year and be like, look, this is where our head's at. Can we just make sure that things like estimates or whatever are just account for this? Or tell us you think it's stupid. Or let's have a conversation with the client and see where everyone's head is at on this strategy. Another thing's carry forward losses. We don't actually know all the time. We tell clients to send us their tax return. They send us the first 2 pages, which is awesome. There's also 700 schedules that come with it, and I need to see actually most of them.
Wow.
So we'll reach out to the tax preparer and be like, look, can you set of those 700 schedules, I need 4 numbers from all of them, right? So like, we'll be like, look, can you just hit us with these high level numbers of, and this is what we were thinking. Or another one's, in the last 4 years, you had the Trump tax cuts. I don't remember what, Tax Growth and Jobs Act. That's what it was called. So we accelerated some people's IRA distributions or beneficiary IRA distributions into those years, not knowing they'd be extended. Yes, we should have done it over 8 years. If I had a crystal ball and knew yada, yada, we would have done it that way. The accountant now needs to know those distributions are done. Those people's taxable incomes is going from $70,000 a year to 0 from their IRA distributions. That changes a lot about the estimates you would prepare for them, what kind of capital gains. Can we impart a new strategy now that they're in the lower bounds of the capital gain, potentially the 0% capital gains bounds? These are all things that like the CPA is only seeing them once a year. They walk in with this pile of papers and they're like, yeah, just do my return. So we just kind of like facilitate.
And the cool thing about this is I know what Drew's talking about, and my eyes glazed over while he was saying this. This is the crazy technical stuff he gets in the weeds about. But
hey, but this is exactly the type of guy you want doing your taxes, right?
But no. That's why it's so important. That's why it's so important that Lyle's here, because I prepare the letter and then I don't want to talk about it. I'll talk to the accountant about it, but I'm probably not going to want to like really granularly go through it with the I'll talk, but Lyle is delighted to go on a low, like get in there with you and discuss like what
I can figure out how to synthesize Drew into English so that a client will understand it. And all they need to know is that spa music that Drew is playing is just playing in the background and it's being taken care of, and they never have to think about it ever again. Whether it's over their head or not doesn't matter.
I really think the most important thing we do for people is just reduce financial friction. There is this time in March where there's friction between, oh my God, I got to get these papers for this guy. Any time we can step in and just reduce that financial friction so that you're not thinking about staying up at night. The other day I had to get my tire changed at Audi, and I was literally up at night because I had to drive on a spare tire to Audi. It was just friction in my life. I lost a night's sleep over getting a tire swapped out. And then I was there from 9:30 to 1:30. No one wants that experience. Everyone just wants their time back. If I could have that 6 hours back of my life.
Drew said to me a long time ago, he's like, I never want clients to have to come in and fill out forms. I don't want anybody to come into our office and feel like it's the DMV. And so what we've tried to do is create an experience that's as 180-degree reverse from that as we possibly can get.
And by the way, we've actually done fairly well on the not filling out forms. Is if we have your tax return, we already have a good majority of the information, and then like maybe there'll be one or two items that's missing, and we'll just help fill them in for you. But we fill out we take care of the entire intake process. We've really done I remember when we used to work, are we allowed to say the name of the company?
We used to work at a large wirehouse.
Oh, there you go.
Okay. There we go.
With a stagecoach as the mascot. So anyways, when we worked there, the client intake, I can't believe we ever onboarded anyone. They would just, and it was all in paper. Nothing was DocuSign. Everything was, and I'm like, gosh, like, and you make them fill it out.
I have to say one other thing. Drew, about OnePoint. Drew and I are truly blessed. We work at one of the most tech-forward places that you can possibly imagine. And we are actually working on developing an app for OnePoint that will have everything that the client needs literally from the moment that they decide they want to become a client. They can literally monitor the process of their new account paperwork being prepared, new account paperwork being emailed to them for DocuSign, the status of account transfers, literally everything inside the app from that moment that they decide they want to become a client till they're actually onboarded as a client, which we've always had the ability to give folks access to what happens once everything gets there. But you've never had this opportunity to see what happened before that and literally be apprised of the progress of your situation along the way. And so, I know our chief technology guy, he's unbelievable, and him and his team have been working on that for us for the last couple of months. Our expectation is by the middle of this year we should have that in place, and that's going to be super cool for prospective clients.
Can I just say one thing about that though?
That's exciting
for our clients who are not specifically tech forward. My 101-year-old grandma still gets her paper statements. She's still like, we are cognizant of the fact that not everybody wants everything on the computer, and some people want things. That's cool. That's not a problem. We can work through that as well.
We meet people where they are.
Absolutely.
On that note, for anybody who's interested in meeting you and discussing possibly working with you, what is the best way that they can get in touch?
Yeah, check out the website, Retire Better LI, short for Long Island, which is where we're based. Has everything about Drew, myself, our team, services we provide, what the experience will look like. and also obviously a link over to our main, our umbrella site at OnePoint. You can get to as well from our website. So retirebetterli.com.
Lyle and Drew Rosman, thank you for coming.
It's still
Enjoy the chat.
Rosman. What are you going to do it again?
Rosman. Lyle and Drew Rosman.
Still Rosman.
Hey, man, I got a hard name to pronounce, too.
I hope you got one hell of an editor, buddy.
If it's any consolation, I'm not going to be the one, when we launch this podcast, I'm not going to be the one doing the bulk of the interviews. I'm going to have somebody else do it. But
I'm sure glad you did ours then. I feel honored.
What I wanted to do is I'm wanting to get a feel for what it needs to be like so that I can hire the right person. And it's hard for me to understand what that looks like without just getting in there and getting my hands in it myself. But
hire me, dude.
I like it.